correct. But that wasn't so bad. It's quite loud. We have two dynamic markings. We have forte and then forte. And I don't understand why it's printed again, unless it's just a reminder. But I think it's going to need a bit more than that. The height edition certainly does a bit more than that. All kind of within like this forte atmosphere. And if you can see, they're a bit more in terms of like phrasing markings in this edition. I'm going to start, I think, with the second half and work backwards on this one. So, for lack of a better word, let's call the second forte is like kind of the recap and start there. It's not really a recap at all, is it? Part B, the second half? I don't know. So that's where I made a mistake before. That skip from the F to the E flat. It's a little crunched, so I'm going to write the notes in above just to make sure I don't miss it. I had with my fingers earlier. Please don't do what I am doing, which is not always planning my pinkies correctly when I have these C and E flat movements. I definitely have been doing some weird slides and finger skips where I didn't need to, so I want to mark them so that I don't do that again. I do have the alternate E flat key, so it shouldn't matter, but one, I'm not in the habit of using it yet because I've never had one before. And two, I don't like to use it for these streams where I'm doing the studies because most students don't have one on their instrument. But there are definitely a couple times where you may or may not have heard that it was a bit, I don't know if messy is the right word, but it wasn't as smooth and tidy as it could have been. And that's an easy fix. That's something I can easily do to make it sound nicer. So I want to make sure that I do that. If you're not a clarinetist and you've ever played in an orchestra or a wind ensemble and sat next to a clarinet player, then if you see their music and there are like little R's and L's over everything, it's usually for this very situation where we're using those pinky keys. Maybe not everybody needs to do this, but I feel like planning it out always gives me the best chance for success. Sometimes it's quite intuitive and you don't really need to go into any great lengths to have your pinky movements planned out, but sometimes it's not as intuitive as you might think, and it can make things sound so much nicer to just have already made those decisions ahead of time. So I'm going to go back to the top. That's one I didn't do right. I'm going to use left hand C there as well. Even though it doesn't feel intuitive, I think it'll make it cleaner. Feeling myself trying to rush, so I definitely don't want to do that. So the metronome is helping. I'm pretty sure I rushed a lot when I played it through before, so I'm glad that I'm going back and fixing that with the metronome. I'm going to go from the top one more time. but it's going to be a bit tricky while I'm on with the metronome. It's going to sound kind of funky, but if I do my job right, it should work out evenly. I'm going to change reeds real fast. That's not quite as good as the other one, but it'll work. Okay. All right, I'm going to go back to the beginning. I'm still brushing a little bit. I'm going to put on eighth note subdivisions. Nope, that breath was wrong. Last time it went better. I'm becoming aware of all the places I rushed when I played it through the first time. I really want to correct that. I think it's getting better. I'm doing weird things with my fingers. I'm trying really hard not to rush, but there's it's my index finger on my right hand is really wanting to do its job ahead of schedule. And I pick up after the repeat. I'll probably need a breath there, but maybe not once it's faster. I'm gonna mark those in. Because I had a moment of is it meant to be? Breathing through here is going to be a bit of a challenge. And it's going to change the faster I get as well. Something technical like this, breaths at slower tempo tend to be quite different from breaths at faster tempo. Another one of those A flats that I had no business missing. I want to look at the height addition for a minute because there's not much to go on phrase-wise, and I don't want to just have it be loud all the way through. The good thing about the height addition is he very kindly wrote in a lot of the pinky markings that I wrote in, particularly the first one, the second measure, the left-handed C. I'm going to take all of his dynamics with a pinch of salt and treat most of them like they're kind of within the context of forte, because we never really get softer, not by much anyway. Well, he wrote in the piano here. We can see what that sounds like. But it also seems to me like a lot of the height dynamic markings have more to do with directionality of the air and phrasing in that regard, and less to do with actual dynamic changes. Although some of these that he wrote I am going to keep. Some of them I'm ignoring because I don't really feel like it should have that big of a contrast. Like, I don't think anything should really be true piano, and I don't think anything should really be, like, very noticeably softer. All of this should sort of happen within that, like, forte energy, that forte framework. I think it's possible, and it could actually sound really nice to sell parts of this, to sell, like, furioso energy, but from a softer dynamic. So maybe I will try that in a bit. So that's the first thing I want to try. I want to see if I can do I don't think it's going to be a true piano, but a much softer moment, or the softest moment of this full study. I'll go back to the beginning of the third line. So I didn't play that right, but I think that could work if the piano is kind of like quick. It's just kind of a moment to like turn around and kind of change the mood a little bit. Work. I find that little ending, that little section to be a little funny, but that's okay. I think I'm playing it correctly. I think it's just the way it's written. I'm gonna try that from the top one more time. I didn't get a good enough breath, but I think that'll work okay. I don't know what it is I'm doing that is so weird. I think my left pinky is getting back a little slow. Sometimes when stuff like that is happening, one finger's getting to its place too soon, or another finger is getting to its place too late, or a combination of the two. And I think that time is actually my left pinky getting to its spot too late. I find it really interesting when, I guess this is true for most any instrument, when you break down a mistake you're making and you find it's like the tiniest little movement or lack of movement that is causing you to make this mistake. And I know I personally sometimes attempted to just sit there and bash away at it with the metronome, just trying to like make it better, whereas the time ends up being much more productive if I kind of like dig into it and figure out why it's going wrong. I did. I added an F sharp in there, and it shouldn't be. It should, yeah, it's an F natural. There are some mistakes in the original, but that is not one of them. I'm going to do that spot one more time. Whichever finger that is, I thought it was my pinky, but now I'm not sure. But whichever finger is getting to its spot late is better, but still not 100%. two sections together, but without the metronome, and doing my best not to rush. Better. There's still that one spot. I'm just going to put a little star next to that measure because I want to come back to that later. That doesn't look like a star. That looks like a mess. Well, let's go into the next big section. But I'm going to do it with metronome. So that I want to mark too. I think I got it right the first time, but then I messed it that time and one other time. So I want to make sure I have that marked. So part of my brain really wants that to be the same as the first statement, and it's not. So I need to make sure I don't make that mistake. Better. Let me try that bit without the metronome and see if I can not rush. Try it for the beginning a bit faster. I don't want to go 108, but let's try, that was 85 that I was at, so let's try 95 and see how this sounds. From the beginning at that faster tempo but without the metronome and see if with a little bit of flexibility if I can make those breaths work. Better. I did a weird articulation thing at the end. do that from the beginning one more time. Again, I really want to like duplicate the first half of the bar and the second half of the bar, but it's different. So I think it's getting better. One note that I like to add is that if you're working on something like this, something very technical, and you're a wind player, obviously doesn't quite relate if you're a string player or a percussionist, I would plan like multiple breathing scenarios because as your tempo changes, so will your oxygen needs. And I find that like when I'm playing faster, I need fewer breaths because the time between breaths is shorter, but the breaths are also quicker because of phrasing and pacing, so I don't get quite as much air. So I may actually end up taking more breaths that I didn't originally plan when it's a long stretch without a rest, like without time for a proper breath. I'm going to play through it one last time, and then I think I'm going to wrap up.